Theseus Body and Mind Legion. Hope you guys are awesome. Welcome to another episode of Fitter Body, Stronger Mind. Today we're talking about taking action for success. There it is, taking action for success. I put a few things in the blurb about avoiding procrastination, strategies that we can use to ensure that we actually do take action on the things that we're motivated to achieve, our goals. Sometimes we are motivated to achieve them, but we can't figure out the next step, how to actually execute what needs to be done in order to get there. Sometimes we're lacking the motivation. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. We always end up coming back around to motivation in some remit or another because it's such a big thing. And talk about how we can start unlocking elite health and performance using these strategies to get more things done, be productive, be efficient, all that good stuff. If you still have not downloaded your copy of the Fitter Body, Stronger Mind ebook that lays out all the essentials you need to develop awesome fitness and a resilient, powerful mindset for success, then you can download that using the link in the description here. Equally, if you're already ready to take the leap to elite health and performance, follow the link to apply now for a limited spot on our exclusive coaching program. Okay, only a select number of spaces available at any one time on that. So get yourself on the waiting list if you want to be a part of that now. Without much further ado, okay, hopefully Gaz is going to join us on this one as well. He should be jumping in fairly soon. So let's start talking about the first things first, which is, for me, understanding that procrastination is often the hardest part of this process, okay? And we'll talk about why that is. First and foremost, and this is a point that was reiterated on a podcast I was listening to, an interview with Johnny Wilkinson a while ago, not with me, someone else's interview with Johnny Wilkinson, where he's talking about anxiety and how anxiety only ever surrounds a situation. It's never part and parcel of the time when you're actually engaged with what needs to be done, right? So he was talking about during his career, really burning out on worrying about the lead up to games, what else could be done, had he prepared enough, what was going through the other players' minds, looking after them, all of these other millions of factors that were going through his mind, burning him out right up until the lead up to the game. Then he'd play the game, he'd have absolutely no anxiety whatsoever or apprehension about anything during the time that he was engaged in the sport, in the performance. And then all the anxiety would come back again after the game. You start worrying about what went wrong, what could have been done better, again, what to prepare for the next one, and so on. Okay, and the point of what he's getting home there is that the anxiety only exists on either side of the action that you need to take. Taking the actual action doesn't involve anxiety. It might involve negative feelings of not wanting to do it necessarily, or if it's hard, or if it's something that's uncomfortable, if it's something that scares you. All of those factors obviously might still come into play, but the anxiety in a lot of cases is often the worst part, and that only exists on either side of the action that needs to be taken. So it's really important to bear that in mind, okay? That the procrastination in that respect is often the worst part of the journey. Actually taking the action is quite often the most enjoyable part. We're often, once we get going, once we get caught up in the action that needs to be taken, then we tend not to really be worried about it. We tend to be engaged about it. We tend to just deal with the situation, even if it's not that pleasant. We just tend to deal with it. All right. Once it's happening, we deal with it, and we get so caught up in the moment of dealing with it that the anxiety is just, it's not there. There's no time now to be anxious about it. Once that procrastination is out of the way and taking action. Okay, and this is the same for any goal. It doesn't matter whether you're looking towards improving your fitness, whether you're looking towards improving your career, improving your health in general, improving your mood, your personal relationships, improving your your general presence, your self-confidence. There's a million different ways in which you can optimize health and performance, and it doesn't really matter what the specifics of the goals are. Okay, that stands true for everything. The procrastination, the anxiety that surrounds the action that needs to be taken is usually the worst bit. Doing it is not. Okay, also procrastination sends us down this rabbit warren of overthinking quite often, which again plays into anxiety about that specific thing, but it also makes us very inefficient at the other things in our lives that we're trying to take care of. Okay, so as an example, what has your attention, whether you're actually engaging in the action of it or not, is quite often the only thing that you can think about. And so, it's unlikely that there's only one thing in your life that you need to be thinking about. And therefore, procrastinating, putting all your attention on something that needs to be done but that you're not doing, is making you very inefficient at getting the other important stuff in your life done. So that, as an example, if we're looking to improve in our career, okay, we're thinking about work, maybe there's a course that we should be working on in the background, or maybe there's some kind of personal growth that needs to be taken care of in order to get to the next rung up, or there's certain conversations that you need to be having with certain people that you work with in order to secure that position that you're looking to obtain in the future. Okay, all the time that you're thinking about those, you're not able to take care of the other stuff in your life that's also, I'm sure, very important, such as maybe the family that you have at home, maybe the fitness goals that you have, the health goals that you have, and all this other stuff. I don't need to list them all. So, hello, Gaz. How are we doing?
Good morning.
Thanks for dropping in.
All well over here.
Excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, I've just been talking about procrastination specifically. Okay, how to not how to as of yet, but thinking about taking action towards goals. I was just going over how procrastinating about taking action is often the hardest part of the journey. And firstly, it leads to that anxiety that only ever surrounds the moment of action. Okay, anxiety usually doesn't exist within the period of the action when you're actually engaging with what it is that you need to get done. Anxiety usually only exists on either side of that, and that period of procrastination quite often leads to overthinking about things, which in itself leads to more anxiety, but also makes us more inefficient at getting the other stuff in our life done. Because when something that needs to be actioned is taking our attention, but we're not doing it, then it's detracting focus away from the other stuff in our lives. As an example, actually, that you'll probably be on board with here, that I like to think of when I think about quick decision making being more effective than overthinking, and that's snap shooting drills. So when you're in the shooting range, particularly with pistol firing as an example, anyone who's ever fired a pistol knows it's pretty hard to get a good, accurate grouping with a pistol. Obviously much more difficult than with a rifle to get nice close groupings on the target. And when you're doing firing drills, as part of the military or whatever service you're involved in that requires that, you usually get trained in two types. That static firing, where you're taking your time with the shot and just looking at improving accuracy, and then there's the snap shooting drills, which is like the opportunistic drills. That's the fast reaction stuff. So you might have literally 1 second on a target that's just popped up to make your shot, as opposed to standing in front and taking your time. And I often found that with a pistol especially, my snap shooting was quite often better than my static shooting. It's almost like having to make that reaction and rely a little bit more on just instinctive movement plays into efficiency to some level. I don't know if you had any experience with that, or you can relate to that.
Yeah, I have, I found that the most surprising thing was that there wasn't much difference. Yeah.
Like in terms of the result, in terms of
the result,
yeah,
there wasn't actually as much different as I really thought. So yeah, I guess it plays into your analogy completely. That just everything I was doing before is completely overthinking, because I wouldn't go as far as say it was better, but yeah, there wasn't really much difference. There was, same kind of groupings.
Yeah, exactly. And there you go. I mean, that's testament to what I'm saying, in that you would think that if you've only got 1 second or half a second to make a shot, that it's going to be significantly worse than if you've got, 30 seconds to stand there and take your time. But actually it doesn't turn out like that, and maybe I was dramatizing it. Probably in reality, I probably wasn't better at the snapshots, but maybe I was. I can't remember exactly, but I remember being the same as you, being surprised that it wasn't much worse. And like exactly as you just said it, that goes to show that you're not being any more efficient with that time necessarily, and actually the amount of additional thinking that you're putting into it is not translating into increased success.
Definitely.
So I want to talk about some tactics that people can use at home who are struggling to fight through their procrastination, that could be useful for taking the actions that need to be done. And I try to be quite clear that this doesn't really matter. The goals with relation to this aren't really specific. They're not important. This can be sort of related to whatever your goals might be. We deal with a lot of things, a lot of different factors when we look at optimizing health of our TBM clients. They're dealing with all sorts of goals, and I use the same sort of principles we're going to talk about today to deal with all of those. And so one that kind of strikes me as a good place to start for me, that works really well in my experience, is being very clear about what the next very realistically achievable step is going to be. Because I feel like what quite often happens, especially with the guys that I work with, is that the procrastination is bred out of becoming overwhelmed by the overarching outcome. So people build it up in their heads. Weight loss is a great example. You've got 50 pounds to lose, 25 kilos of weight to lose. That's quite a huge number. That's not a quick fix journey. Taking that initial step to get into the gym, or to get out running, to get doing some physical activity, or to actually employ a better diet strategy, can often be you can often be stalling on that, just because the goal seems so huge that there's that kind of psychological resistance to even getting started, because it's such a mammoth task. And so this is this is one step that I get just about everyone that I work with to look at doing initially, which is, for every purpose that we outline, for every goal that we outline, the next identifiable, easily achievable action must be outlined. And sometimes when you just go through that process of breaking it down to the smallest step, it suddenly seems much easier. But it has to be continuous.
Yeah, it does have to be continuous. So what I'm thinking in my head now is, I would classify two different types of events that one can procrastinate about. There are things that should be habitual, and there are things that are one-offs. So how that melds into saying, it sounded a little bit like some of the examples you were giving were habitual ones. And there was something I like you actually said the other day on other podcasts. Your wording for it was non-negotiable actions or non-negotiable habits. You will do X every day. So there comes a point in terms of logic where you're simply going to say, I'm going to do this anyway. I might as well crack on with it now. And if there's a given short time frame, then you do crack on with it a lot quicker. Two examples, two things we've been talking about. One, a cold shower. if you've got to be in and out the house in 5-10 minutes, you're not going to think too much and build yourself up and think too much about that cold shower. You're just going to jump in. You're going to jump in and wash and scrub and get the job done and come out, and you still did it. Okay, maybe you didn't stay in there for your 3.5 minutes, or whatever it is that you wanted to stay in. Maybe you got in there and ended up just doing it because you're in there now and doing the full routine. But at least you got stuck in, and it was a habit, and it's something that you're going to do daily. To use a personal example of something I do, it's really easy to procrastinate about going running, especially in the summer. Or then again, there's all the other excuses in the winter. You know, you're going to sweat. You're going to have to shower afterwards. You're going to, you know, put shorts on that you don't mind being soaked. You can sling in the corner. What are you going to do with your shoes when you take them off? You know, put your running shoes on. Blah 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 blah. All those things. I've got a 1-year-old baby, and he's very much in a habit where he naps twice a day. And one of the things that gets him to nap is I, you know, walk him around in his pushchair, in his stroller. My runs coincide with his naps. So I'm on 2-a-days at the moment. So I've got 2 in this habit. So the procrastination, when you've got a cranky, screaming baby, and that one step, like you say, is always going to be the same. I've got to put my shoes on and run. I've got to put my shoes on to get him out the door. I've got to wear something. I've got to do something to get out that door. Whether I'm thinking about my overarching goal of improving and layering on just hard runs and easy runs and, you know, everything that it is I'm going to do, I can almost let that side of things be slightly chaotic and make up my mind as I go out the door. In the sense of, without confusing people, like my programming, I can get out the door and go like, oh, right, what did I do yesterday? Yesterday I gave it a good effort. I gave it a hard run. So this one's going to be my easy run, or this one's going to be my long run, and the next one's going to be my shorter run. Like I said, I do 40s and 20 minutes, like 2 a day. So the point is, I've got no option for procrastination because I'm going to get out the door and do something anyway. So it might as well be productive. And then 2, in terms of just getting out there and doing it, the decision's been made for me. And 3, in terms of the overarching goal, I'm not really thinking about fat loss this, you know, ultramarathon that. Whatever it is that I'm doing, the goal is get out the door. That's the first step. Get out the door with your running shorts and shoes on. So that's an easy decision to make. Whatever I do today, because I am going to run today, it's going to involve running shoes and shorts. So in everything, you know, your mind almost shrinks down to that goal. Like, I've got a crying baby, quick, grab my running shorts, quick, put my shoes on. Just like that shooting. Okay, now I'm out there. Now I've got that 1 second to do it. I'm in the moment. Put one foot in front of the other. I've got one foot in front of the other. What's the next thing I'm thinking about? My route. All right, I'll think about my route. Did I remember to put my digital watch on? Yeah, I kept it in the stroller. Whoop, time it. You know, like, and just like that, snapshot done. But that, I guess the real point I'm making is often, no matter what your goals are, no matter what the big picture is, the first step's always the same. The first step's always the first step. It might, so you might vary your plan to suit something that's going to be more tailored 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps down the line. But normally, those steps are altered by how step 1 goes anyway. So step 1, get out, and then the rest of it just will snowball.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that ties in really well with the sort of stuff that 𝐀𝐜𝐜𝐿 talks about, the habit guy. He's like the habit guru, author of Atomic Habits, and he talks about, you know, kind of not really worrying about goals, like paying way too much attention to goals. Decide what your goal is at the start, then decide what the system is to get yourself to that goal, and then just follow the system. The system is what produces the outcome. The goal becomes irrelevant once you've got the system in place. So like you say, you know, the goal then becomes a byproduct of just taking the the steps, taking those first steps, executing those actions.
And you know what? If you're afraid of making errors in something like that, and something, because we are talking about fitness and health and everything, you're probably better off making errors in action than you are making errors in inaction.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
Part of your goal was you wanted to get, I'd say I'm running twice a day, and it interferes perhaps with my strength training goals. But guess what? I got runs in. I didn't procrastinate and just walk the baby. Like, I've still started doing physical activity and exercise. So it's still more productive than sitting and not doing anything. And you know what? I can always amend that on route, but at least I'm on the path. At least I'm going. And so, this is not in keeping with the kind of periodized program or whatever that I want for my overall goal. But guess what? I'm running in a brilliant prep state to start my strength training, better than if I've got more energy for it now because I've put some runs under my belt in my legs than if I hadn't. So the benefit is I'm in a better preparatory state of general physical adaptation to start lifting weights, whatever it is you want to do. I'm pulling these examples out. But I think it's better to amend on the move. There's few things in life where you really just get one crack at it, and if you do it wrong, you screw it up, and that's it's never work again. It's not like you're trying to make a first impression on your dream job here in these examples that we're giving. You're moving and you're going and you're on the path, and it's all kind of downhill from there. You just
Yeah, definitely. The respawn mentality. I like it. You always get another crack. No, but that's absolutely true, mate. And, it's really important to remember that failure is part of the path to success. They're not opposites. It's all integral. James Dyson made over 1,500 prototypes of the Dyson vacuum cleaner before he got the right one. One of the stats that always gets thrown around is how many free throws Michael Jordan missed, during his career. He missed thousands more than just about anyone else, but that's because he threw so many more than anyone else. He perfected it better than everyone else. And that is it. You're absolutely right. The failures that you have in hesitation, in procrastination, in anxiety don't amount to anything. They just amount to time wasted. Whereas the failures that you have in action amount to learning initiatives that can be used to perfect whatever it is, not necessarily perfect, but progress. I'm not a big fan of the term perfection. It's not easily quantitative.
In many ways, it's all theory, and you're attempting to reinvent the wheel, as it were, because you're trying to draw up the floor plans on paper. Whereas if you're in action and you get going, you're more tweaking, as opposed to coming up with the full plan.
You seem to have put yourself into a black hole with your index finger. That was the last thing I saw. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and I really love that you touched on my non-negs, as I like to call them, my non-negotiable habits, non-negotiable disciplines, because that's a big one, and it leads into, it's very much tied together with the mentality that I refer to as pre-DD, which is predetermined decision making. And as you started to talk about, taking that first step, it's about just getting on with it. We talked about kind of procrastinating at the start, and that allowing that time to overthink things and kind of almost think your way out of it. This predetermined decision making is so crucial to actually executing stuff at the time that you plan to do it. Because if you're waiting for the moment to decide whether you're going to take action or not, in that same moment that you're considering whether it's feasible, how you're going to do it, that is the exact same moment that you have the opportunity to talk yourself out of it as well. It's the same period of time that the excuses not to do it start to come up. All right. We want to kind of avoid that time at all. The only thing, when you've made the decision that you're going to take action, you're going to do this step, you've identified the next easily achievable step, you've highlighted the time that you're going to do it, and you've gotten to that time, the only thing that now can hold you back from executing that is hesitation. If you remove the hesitation, then that opportunity to talk yourself out of it also disappears. And now you're doing it. Now you're taking action. Now you're engaged in the moment. The anxiety's gone. The anxiety disappears. Now it doesn't exist in this moment when we're engaged with the action. Okay, now we're doing it. And now we have the opportunity to potentially fail while we're taking that action, but to learn from that rather than failing in inaction, as we just talked about, which doesn't get you anywhere. So yeah, great point from Gaz there about the non-negotiable habits. I have talked about those in the past. I was even talking about them with a client on the phone today, something that I'm always harping on about, and for good bloody reason, I would say. Take away that chance to make a poor decision at the time. Give yourself the opportunity to take action as and when. So that can be the caveat to the first tactic that I mentioned for taking action, which was identifying the next achievable step. What is the very next thing that needs to happen in order to get the ball rolling on that path towards that goal, and when? That is the side note to that point. Okay, identifying what it is, when we're going to do it. In terms of these non-negotiable behaviours, Gaz, I like to use it in conjunction with timings. So, just talking about then, you brought it up actually. I can't remember exactly what it was you said earlier on, but when I was talking about the next achievable step, you were talking about kind of the hesitation and not following through there at the time, or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but it led me on to non-negotiable discipline that I encourage people to do, which is just to stick with timings. Now, what happens here is when we plan stuff in advance, even if the plan is subject to change, it hugely increases the chances we're actually going to follow through with something. Okay. First of all, we've talked about this loads in other talks, motivation. People are often relying on motivation to get them through this decision-making process. For example, it's Wednesday. Yesterday, Tuesday, you planned to run today on Wednesday, but you didn't plan when. Now it's Wednesday. It's got to 5:30 in the afternoon. You've just finished work. You've got home. You're staring at your trainers, and guess what? You're not motivated to go. Now the decision has to be made in this moment whether you're going to go running or not. Guess what? You're probably not going to go. You're not motivated to go, and you didn't decide that now is going to be the time you would definitely do that. Maybe you'll see how you feel in a couple of hours. I know what I'll do. I'll have a cup of tea. I'll sit down for a while. Maybe I'll watch a couple of YouTube fitness videos to find my motivation. Okay, 2 hours go by at 7 o'clock at the time you were thinking, I'll go if I feel like doing it. And guess what? You still don't feel like doing it. Now you're not going. Okay, this is a spiral that many people get into. Okay, so one of these non-negotiable habits that can help us to just take action as and when we plan it is to plan a specific timing. And the non-negotiable habit is don't deviate from that timing unless you absolutely have to. All right. So if you've planned to go running at 5:30, if you decided on Tuesday that 5:30 on Wednesday was the best possible time throughout that day that you could go running, you don't need to think about it at 5:30. You've already done it. You've already done the hard work. 5:30 comes and your protocol should be, I've already thought about this before. I know that this is my best opportunity. I know that if I leave it past this opportunity that I'm probably going to miss it. I know from past experience that I'm not going to be any more motivated in 2 hours, 7:30 p.m. than I am now. And I'm not relying on motivation anyway, because motivation is bullshit. And systems are the only reliable thing that's going to get me to my goals. That's how we take action, okay? Essentially telling motivation to go and itself, because it's never there when we need it, taking matters into our own hands with a bit of pre-DD, okay, predetermined decision making, and our non-negotiable habits and behaviors. So non-negotiables, predetermined decision making, super useful in the battle to taking action, avoiding procrastination, avoiding that hesitation. So yeah, some really good points covered already. These are all the stuff we've kind of talked about now. It's all very, as with everything, always comes back to mindset. Okay, it always comes back to having that perspective shift in the first place to be able to think along these lines. All right, you have to rehearse these thought patterns. Okay, you can't think about this shit once and then tomorrow everything's going to be all right. You can't listen to this podcast and go, oh, that's a great tip. Yeah. So what I do is I'll plan to go running at 5:30 tomorrow, and then I'm definitely going to do it because I want to remember this non-negotiable thing. Yeah, that's not necessarily going to happen like that. You're going to have to rehearse these thought patterns. You're going to have to put it into practice enough times that even the thought pattern itself starts to become habitual. Okay, but they're all geared around, just saying that the points we've covered just now kind of geared a little bit around a change in mindset, which comes with time. It has to be rehearsed in itself in order to adopt those kind of thought patterns, and a little bit of discipline as well. I was talking just then when you were dropped off, Gaz, about, again, we talked about this before, not relying on motivation. It's unreliable. It's not there when you need it. The ironic thing about motivation is that it often turns up after the action, but not before. So, for example, when I did my Ironman last year, I was super anxious about doing it, the whole build up to actually doing it. And then once I'd done it, I was super motivated to do another one and couldn't stop thinking about, when that would be and if I could qualify for the World Championships in 3 years or whatever. Yeah, so motivation turns up when, too late. It turns up when the party's over. Or in this case, when the party hasn't even got started because it wasn't there. Yeah, they do. This mindset shifts relies a little bit on discipline, but there are some ways that we can add a little bit of enjoyment factor into there as well, because as much as I'm a big fan of voluntary discomfort, which we talked about a lot last week, comfort the silent killer, talked about avoiding being too comfortable. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of the enjoyment factor, because I think for a lot of people that's what's missing. And people do beast themselves to the point where now whatever actions it is that you've got lined up that need to be taken towards achieving goals have just become massive chores that you're just not looking forward to. And none of us want to do the shit that we don't want to do. So I think we can talk a little bit about how to switch the perspective on, actually looking forward to taking these actions in the first place. And I was talking about this with another client of mine the other day. Talking about how all the actions that we'd outlined as part of their strategy, they're all acts of kindness. They are things to look forward to. You don't have to wait until you've secured the outcome to be happy. You can be happy now, just enjoying the steps in the process, just enjoying the realization that you can and will change. That's something to look forward to. So again, that requires a bit of a mindset shift. Little tricks are a bit more relatable. Can be things like, taking that next action. So if we take note of the first point, which was identify the next easily achievable step, identify when it's going to happen. The third thing that we can do there is we can identify in what way we can look forward to it, in what way we can craft it so we can look forward to it. And I give a really obvious example. Got loads of examples related to fitness in this one, which is perfect. Podcasts or audiobooks. I really look forward to going for a long run if I've got an awesome audiobook that I want to listen to while I'm doing it. So, yeah, that's one example of how we can take the action that kind of seems like a chore and craft it. What do you think? Have you got some similar?
Well, yeah, I used to have a commute that I couldn't stand until it became my time to listen to podcasts and audiobooks. I wish my commute was longer.
Yeah, disappointed to finish now because you don't have enough time to absorb the final chapter of story of the human body, whatever it might be.
Exactly. No, yeah, I think there are plenty of like that. In terms of procrastination, like I said, I think, or like you said as well, the habits and the pursuit of joy is where it's at. I think when your habit is about the grind, it's never going to, I think your chances of long-term success and commitment and staying with it just become so much smaller. All those niggling things, those doubts, those reasons not to start to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And ultimately, then you feel bad when you give in to them, because it's only afterwards that you recognize what they are. It's almost in line with, motivation comes too late when you're not doing it, and then suddenly you realize all the good things and the benefits of doing whatever it is you wanted to do. The motivation comes, but you made it so hard at the time that it was almost continue with the actions. And I think that's something that does happen a lot. And like we always say, like that's the biggest lesson I've learned as I've gotten older, is that not every session in whatever it is has to be a punishing session. Yes, you have to challenge yourself to grow, but some of that challenge is simply in consistency, and that's one of the things I'm learning with some of my runs. Like right now, I've got a personality type. I'm one of those types where if I'm not bollocksed or challenged by the end of the run, I would normally think that run didn't do anything. And now it's a different form of discipline, partly helped by having a knee injury that doesn't allow me to run as fast as I used to. But I have to almost rein that in, because one, I know that it will physically bugger up my knee, but two, I'm going to keep going, and that the idea that there is a value of just layering on layers and layers and layers of these runs, and that what I would think of as my training runs are probably maybe even 2 or 3 a week, even though most days I'm running twice a day at the moment. And for most of those runs, it's simple maintenance, but there is still adaptation going on. My body is simply being physically active on a certain level every single day. So, physiologically, I could tell you what's going on. I'm layering on layers of capillarization and this and that. And maybe, picking up as much EPO as I normally would if I was doing whatever. And this run isn't necessarily improving my VO2 max or whatever, but there are other things that are happening in a less rapid way. And I will continue to do them. And as I continue to do them, when I do those hard runs and those challenging things, they will be just a fraction easier. So instead of making my level go up like this, it's going to steadily go up, as opposed to go up, spike me, say, oh yeah, I'm kind of fit now, I've had enough of this, and let it come down again. It's going to keep just plateau for a bit, and then I can push it, but my base level is going to be much, much higher. My base level of performance, in theory.
Absolutely. My perspective on it has changed as well in the same way. I used to think, unless you're going to bury yourself in a workout, or you're going to run at least, not any given distance, I suppose, but if you're going to go for a run, it needs, whatever distance you're going, needs to be like best effort. Then there's no point even getting your shoes on. I used to be my mentality, but the more I've learned about the psychological effects of exercise and the different things that we do and the behaviors that we have has shifted my mindset completely about that, because now I realize that, as an example, if I apply that initial methodology of it has to be really hard or it's not worthwhile, then I would have weeks now, being self-employed, where I just wouldn't get anything done, because those opportunities would just not come up for me to go and absolutely thrash myself. I either won't have on so many consecutive days, I either won't have the time or I wouldn't have the energy to push myself into that zone, and then I would not get anything done. Whereas now, and this goes back into my non-negs, my non-negotiable daily habits, that's why I have them, because I realize now that there's so much benefit to my mindset of just getting something as simple as 3 sets back to back, pull-ups and sit-ups, 10 minutes done. It keeps my head in the game. It keeps me from reaching that demoralizing feeling where it's been a whole week. Berlin, it's kicking off outside as per usual. Didn't know if you heard the sirens. It keeps me away from that demoralizing feeling of, oh man, I just realized it's been 7 days since I did a single workout. I've done absolutely nothing. That feeling is it's the start of that downward spiral. Like, oh, there's no point doing anything today. What difference is 10 minutes going to make? But 10 minutes makes so much difference if you can do it every day for that whole week. One thing I really wanted to ask you about, because obviously, you've been an ex-professional athlete fighting out of one of the toughest gyms in the world, London Shoot Fighters, and I know a bit about the scenario there. Like I've been there and trained a little bit. Like I know those guys. I know what that environment's like. I mean, it's savage in there. Back when you were,
everyone knows it's savage.
It's the most inspiring environment to train in ever, but also the most intimidating, because everybody's just an absolute warrior in there. The coaches are just ruthless. And this is what I wanted to ask you about, because you must have had so many weeks during your professional career where you'd be getting, doing some seriously rigorous sessions in the gym, and then having to also go home and do the other stuff that you need to do around that. Because obviously not everything's taken care of during the time that you're in the gym, isn't it? Like if you've got extra cardio to work on and stuff like that, you might have to then go home and also get some steady state running in. You've also got to take care of your diet. You've also got to take care of your injuries. Maybe you've got rehab stuff. What were your strategies during those weeks where you just broken physically to keep plugging on?
My strategy was all in. I moved into the gym.
Yeah, that's true.
So not the right person to ask in terms of like just being a normal mortal. I moved in. And lived there for almost 2 years. That was nice.
No sick days.
Those coaches, every week, at the end of every week, I had to do a Cooper test. I said, no matter how much sparring, no matter how battered I was, if I didn't run a sub 12-minute 2-miler, then I wasn't even considered competition ready. So my very existence there was under threat. So that was a little different. That was all in, I think. And at the end of it all, when I took time off, moved away and just sort of came back to train during the week, the benefit of the 2 years there was that my level went up so much, my base level, when I, at the point where it started to dip and kept dipping, I went away, would come in, 3 or 4 times a week, and my level actually shot up to, for a short period, to better than at any time that it was before. That's a crazy example, because it sort of goes against a little bit of what we've been saying, in that I just jumped in with 2 feet. I went all in. That was my method of handling it. After leaving the gym, my how can I put it? Like taking that all or nothing mentality was essentially leading to injury and a lack of motivation, because to do it at that level, I needed those coaches around me constantly pushing me and monitoring me, knowing when to rein me in for myself, because you're a young athlete like that, you almost can't think at that level. You can't see it. It's up to you. You just got to trust in your coaches to see it for you and do that. the types of people we're talking to now, we're self-managing, and no, most people aren't going to be, you know, elite level combat athletes, and even professional athletes can't maintain that level of intensity year upon year, you know, and all out. There's two different schools of thought in wrestling, where when you look at a lot of the American athletes compared to a lot of the Russian athletes, over the Russian athletes, you see the same athletes coming back on consecutive Olympics year after year after year after year. Succes, you know, that was one of the greats. Alexander Karelin, guys like this. And the American methodology is generally they have one or two techniques that they're amazing at, but their conditioning, their physical preparation, physical fitness, as it were, is amazing. It's incredible. They come along, they smash one Olympics, and that's it. Then everybody sort of maybe knows their moves, or they burn out, and they don't really come back again. Like, they come for one or two Olympics, and then they're done. Karelin was like a 5-time Olympic gold medalist. So when you think about that, I know there's been athletes that have got more medals, like Phelps or somebody like that in the swimming, but when you turn up at one Olympics in swimming, you can do about 7 different events. This guy was only competing in one. So to get 5 Olympic golds means he came back to 5 consecutive Olympics and won. So his longevity of his career was very, very long. Same with Succes. I think he had a similar record. So the Russians, their way of training was nowhere near as physically intense as the Americans. It was more sort of technique and things that are based towards longevity. And in life, that's probably more the athlete you want to be. So are you going to spectacularly just absolutely dominate one Olympics, or are you going to over time dominate life, dominate, you know, 5 Olympics? So that's the kind of mentality that I think most people are after. And so one of the biggest lessons I learned, instead of thinking about it in distance and times, etc., is if you think about it as rate of perceived exertion. So whether it's runs or a lifting session or anything like that, if I didn't hit at least an 8 or 9 out of 10, I would feel like that session wasn't worth it. And even now, even when I'm sort of sometimes doing these maintenance runs, you know, like, okay, you've got the last half mile back or whatever, and you pick up the pace and you try and do that 8 or 9 out of 10. And then there's that feeling of, oh man, next time I go for a run, that felt so hard. You know, I'm going to have to do that again. One of the things I'm doing myself at the moment is on at least, you know, let's call it 7 out of 10 runs at the moment. I'm letting myself just cruise in and let my base level standard, let my times just pick up sort of naturally as I get better. So that rate of perceived effort, what would have felt like 7 out of 10 yesterday in terms of timing, now becomes like my 5 out of 10, and I'm just cruising in, and it will slowly and incrementally come up. And that is because I'm doing base level easy runs, and then challenging myself, honestly, on a really ad hoc level when I feel like it. You know, I'm just game for it today. So I've got the stopwatch out, and I'm just gonna. This is what's normally my 20-minute route. Let's save some seconds off. Let's go for it. And you know, I can do that in 2 ways. I can try for my overall pace can be a little bit faster, or you know, I can do a sort of split time. Say, all right, you know, like I'm 10 minutes in, I'm at roughly the same spot I normally am. Let's try and get home faster today. Those are the ways I'm playing it. And I think if you are motivated, and truly driven, then you can do that. Once you get to know your body, you don't need the program as much as you did, other than I know that this is an endurance session, I know this is a strength session, I know this is, and you can play with it. You say, okay, I was going to do whatever my strength session today, but let's actually find out what my 1 rep max is, and you go for an intense session because you're game and you're ready for it. that, in terms of longevity, I think is so much stronger. And in terms of enjoyment, because you got something out of it, you enjoyed it, you wanted to feel how fast you could run today, you wanted it. Whereas on the days where you don't want it and you feel like you just have to, it's going to be very, very hard to maintain that. And you can start to know yourself. So that's where, to use your term, your non-negotiable habits come in. You're not going to do that every single run or every single lifting session, but you might say once a month. So I'm going to do a 100%er. I'm going to generally cruise along at 50%, and once a month I'm going to do 100%er, or once every 2 months, or once a month, or when I feel like it. Does that make sense? And then it's just knowing your body.
Absolutely.
If you're fatigued, don't do it. If you're feeling fresh and good, and you actually just feel like it, then go for it. I think this has much more of a long-term effect than many others. And that lesson can go over into anything, whether it's creative writing, whether it's anything else. You can apply that same thing in terms of keep it easy, go strong. A really good analogy, actually, I've just remembered this one. I've been talking for a while now, that somebody gave me. It was this Polish guy, and he said the best kickboxer, I can't remember who it was probably quite famous, it was like some famous Polish kickboxer, said that he ever met never appeared to train hard or even move fast, hardly ever in training. And when he asked him about it, he gave him this analogy of a cat, and he said, like, you've seen a cat, you see how a cat is. A cat moves along, gets a little, generally takes life easy, but when it's time to go, a cat can catch a mouse, a cat can catch a bird. And he goes, and that's how I see myself when I feel like going, I can just switch it on. I'm like a cat. Good analogy. And apparently this guy, had a really long career as well.
I think he's probably one of those genetically gifted super freaks that had all the talent and just didn't have to. But yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. I love that analogy. It's a really interesting methodology. Are you like over preparedness? I mean, I've said that a million times. I think most athletes are overtraining. They're overtraining because it's giving them the confidence when they turn up on game day. But
under-resting and over-stressing, and I know I definitely, with military training and stuff like that, I definitely didn't layer on the cardio the way I'm trying to now. I definitely going more, I guess, what in most circles would call the 𝐾𝐿 route, where I'd go do a lot of intensity and I was stressing my central nervous system. But the thing is, when you do that, a lot of the Russians have written about this kind of stuff. And if you want a really good analogy, actually, it's another podcast, probably one of the world's most famous podcasts, on the Joe Rogan podcast. Pavel Tsatsouline talks about this on the base level fitness running side of things. And when you do hard circuits, it only takes about 3 to 6 weeks to develop really great muscular endurance and what you would call that sort of 𝐾𝐿 type adaptation. Your base levels, your ability to do that your let's just call it your 𝐾𝐿 fitness, is going to be much higher if you start off with great strength and great cardio, which you can train in singular sessions. So in terms of periodization theory, if you read like Tudor Bomper and people like that, your conversion phase or consolidation is basically all those circuits and stuff are done at the end. So strength training's done, your cardio base is done, there's another sort of strength training, there's a hypertrophy section, and then you do those either sport-specific drills, you do that 𝐾𝐿 type stuff, and that is the product. It's endurance plus strength equals reps. And then you develop that local muscular endurance at the end of all that. So that's a short phase. So what I was doing with the military training was I was basically doing those kind of metcon, doing those sprints, doing those circuits, and I'll bring my VO2 max up. But my actual capacity, my potential for a high VO2 max was low because I didn't do layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of just those simple, easy runs. So my potential
makes sense.
could have been if I'd have done that. And again, that's kind of where I'm going now in terms of performance. So what I'm saying for people is the hard blitzing sessions, the one that really makes you sweat and even technically, burn more fat with the intensity and all the rest of it, that is a process that doesn't take long. But your ability to develop the infrastructure and develop a really good platform and foundation to build that house on depends on the consistent work. And that fortunate side of that is it's less intense and it's easier. And it's less intense by way of pure intensity in terms of the cardio endurance side of things, and it's less intense in terms of the volume when you're lifting. So you might do heavier but less, so you're not actually going to fatigue, so there'll be less grinding, as it were. You won't have to grind as much, but you will be consistent. And then when you want to get shredded or whatever it is, that's when you get the circuits. And that's where I went wrong for me in the military training. I think my potential would have been much higher if I'd have just reined it in and taken it easier and just gone day in, day out, day in, day out. 5 out of 10 perceived exertion rate for a year or two beforehand.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, it's much more conducive to longevity and sustainability. And there's no point having the fitness if you're not in good enough condition to pull it off on the day. So
personality type, it can almost be a new form of discipline. Sometimes for me, I find it's hard to rein myself.
Fair enough. Yeah, interesting.
Some days it's almost more of an act of mental discipline to not finish my run hard or not do the rest of it, and to save it when I can do the whole run hard, or to save it when I'm really going to lift and those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's it. I think that goes for again talking about my Ironman last year again. That was the most difficult thing about the training for that, was having to spend so much time in a low heart rate training zone. The only way I got around it was breaking everything down into intervals pretty much. So I had my hard intervals. So even if I was doing a 20-mile training run, I'd have 20 minutes in there that would be 1 to 2 minutes of fast anaerobic, and trying to keep 80% of it to really lower zone training. And this is the problem, is that there's a big problem for athletes that are training for stuff like that, is they're always training in what they call the grey zone. That's zone 3 usually, where you're somewhere between aerobic and anaerobic. You're not really training either one. I don't want to get too technical about that stuff, and we're definitely veering off of where we started. But yeah, I like the train that you were going with there, and that's really interesting what you're talking about with regards to not just your military training, but training for sport as well. And actually, you kind of I think you discredited yourself a little bit when you're saying, by living in the gym, you weren't sort of using tactics to take action, as if you were kind of putting yourself in the prison where that was the only option. But I think for me, what you're basically saying there is that you're cultivating the environment that's conducive to the outcome, which is a big part of taking action. That's a very extreme variant of packing your gym bag the night before so that you take it to work with you in a way.
Yeah, that's true. I remember coming up to fights and things like that. I remember I think it was after living, I mean, obviously I'd had pro fights before living in the gym, but after living in the gym, there was I had a fight coming up, and I was tapering off. Yeah, you can take a few days off or not, you know, like go home, you know, see your mum, stuff like that, relax. And I was like, I don't really want to. I'd rather just relax here and be around the guys, because I didn't want to get out of that mental zone. I wanted to be around the other fighters. I liked being around watching the other guys train, even though now I could, like, you know, relax a bit and train less. I still wanted to keep my head in that mind space and be. And actually, now that my hard training's over and it's all going to happen now, I was happy, so happy to be there, because at the end of the day, it's something we're passionate about and we all love, you know. So now I'm, you know, the other guys are sparring, I'm watching and cornering them and coaching them, and, you know, I don't have to put out the action, but my head is still in it, you know, and I'm just watching and absorbing and just enjoying being in the environment.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I do it with work. It's the same thing. Like when I come to take a day off, I'll program in, you know, I'll schedule a day off for myself, but I'll always end up doing a little bit of work. And it's not because I feel like I necessarily have to, but it's because I don't like the feeling of having like a whole day off and then trying to get back into the rhythm the next day. It's exactly the same way in fitness as well. Like, you know.
Well, I've no doubt that you're doing the parts that you enjoy as well. When you're not like, oh, doing the grinding parts where it's not. You're doing the parts that you're actually mentally interested in, the bits, or at least the bits that you're interested in as well, and that's always much easier. There was a great analogy I've heard before, in that there's two ways to train an athlete, and one is the Apollonian way, which is very organised, and one is the Dionysian method, which is quite chaotic. And I think there's a time for both. So what is the difference? So say, you know, back in the day, in the midst of time and antiquity, you've got the first Olympic Games coming up, and you know, Apollo, who is I am the sun, you know, there's 24 hours in a day, I get up, I push the boat along, you know, la 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 la. He's very, you know, organized and has his programmed schedule. And then there's Dionysus, who's chaotic, both going to train an athlete. And Apollo says, you know, right, this is how you train an athlete. On day one, you know, he gets up, he does his strength first, strength comes first. And then, you know, tomorrow he's going to do his technical work, and he's going to throw his javelins in the morning. And then, you know, in the afternoon is, you know, throw the discus, and so on and so forth. And everything's really, really, really regimented and organised. And the next day he's going to go for a run, give him the afternoon off, and then we'll just do a little stretching in the afternoon at some It says like, oh, I'm just going to take my guy out, and if we come to a river, I'm going to get him to swim it. If we come across a big rock, lift it if you feel like it, and if you don't feel like it, we'll go on to the next thing. If we find a person, let's wrestle him. Yeah, and it goes on and on like this. Both of them are valid ways to train somebody, and I think there's a time for each. So if I've got an event coming up, I will go Apollonian. I will go, okay, I've got this amount of time. Let's consolidate all the gains that I've made in the off season. With the Dionysian method, during, say, let's call it an off season, you know, talking in terms of sports here, but, you know, people in their lives can organise their own on and off seasons. You pursue the parts that you just enjoy, and that's when you get creative, and that's when you find your strengths and you get to work on them. And then when you have to, if you feel like you have to grind, you can work on the weaknesses and give yourself an honest appraisal and try and round them out. But that's not constant throughout the year. And, you know, to talk from my own background, I think in martial arts that particularly applies, because that's when the guys get creative and develop new ways to win and new styles and things like that. So if I'm in the off season, not smashing the hard figures, and I'm not, you know, just working these drills that are based around just getting what I already know sharper or harder or faster or whatever, and I start working on the cool stuff, like, hey, you know, what about this counter to a right cross? You know, I've seen it work before. I've got this idea, you know, it might look crazy, but, you know, this is my spinning back kick counter as I slip somebody's right straight punch, or I hit a duck under like I'm going to take a guy's back, which would be pretty flat square move that everybody learns and is a success rate. But I'm going to convert it, get under there, and go for a flying armbar from there. Something that the average person will not expect. It might be a trick that catches them out. And it's in those moments, those sort of Dionysian moments, where you chill out, that you actually make the big leaps. And then as your event comes, okay, you get sharper, you get back to basics, and maybe those moves have become some of your basics, and you drill them and get sharp, and you get more Apollonian and periodized about it. And I think we can apply that in our lives with our procrastination. If you really, 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 really aren't going to grind today, well, at least do something that is in the vein of the theatre of the goals that you are trying to achieve. At least, get your
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's really interesting as well. I haven't really heard much about that at all. I want to study that a little bit. Go ahead and go away and do a little bit of reading on that. It's really interesting. I like that. I think it's really important. I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I think within all sports as well, like even within the more kind of like disciplined structured training, there are scheduled times for like chaotic or pseudo random like training principles as well, even in amongst the organization. Like as an example, like fartlek running, almost every running program you ever see, no matter what the distance is, will include some kind of fartlek running where the pace is just random, the pace is mixed up. And like when I've written running programs for people that have specific events coming up, I've always encouraged including a free run. And that's almost like a day off, just a run where you don't time anything, where you just go out and you just run how you feel like it. Just run as far as you feel like, at the pace that you feel like. And if after 5 minutes you're not really feeling it, you can run home if you want. But if you end up going for like a half marathon, and quite often people realize they've actually done like really good times on those runs. They get back and then they check the Garmin and they weren't even looking at it, they don't even look at the heart rate zone or anything. And then they get back and they're like, oh, I just, cracked a pretty decent 10 miler there, and I got my like fastest mile in that segment or whatever. I totally agree with everything you just said. I think it's really important. Yeah, well, go on. Sorry.
Keeps things fun and interested. Keeps you interested. Keeps you motivated.
Yeah.
Keeps you. That's the trick. Consistency and enjoyment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think we've really summed up what the keys to taking action there, which are that it's twofold. It's about being disciplined, and it's about adopting that mindset where you're prepared to just do things, to just get on with them, and the little tricks that are involved with that aspect of it. But it's also about looking forward to it. It's the balance between discipline and enjoyment. They both feed into the process of taking action. If you're really hating it and you're really not looking forward to it, you're probably never going to get around to doing it, and never going to do it enough to be consistent and successful. Equally, if you just waiting to be motivated to do it, that's also not going to work. There's definitely two sides to there. I think we summed it up really well. It's probably a good place to leave it there. As per usual, we could end up going on for hours, but the viewers are probably dropping off. So yeah, awesome, guys. Cheers again for turning up for another awesome talk, guys and girls at home. Feel free to drop some questions in the comments, even after this video has gone live, even after it's been posted. Feel free to drop some questions. I'm going to start giving away some prizes to best questions asked. And any questions that go into the comments of these videos on whatever platforms, we'll try to get around to putting together content, steering, and future talks around those comments and that engagement. So get stuck in. If there's anything that has inspired you to post a comment, post a question, then by all means put it on there. You might just get something through the door with some goodies to you once I've got hold of you and got your details. if you haven't downloaded the ebook, I've said it at the start, I'll say it again, all the essentials for developing awesome fitness and mental resilience for elite health and performance, then download the Fitter Body, Stronger Mind ebook. Make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, make sure you don't miss out on any future talks, and make sure that you share it with somebody that you know will enjoy this, find it useful, needs to hear it, contribute to the world, get sharing. And I think that's all from me. Any waffle from you, Gareth?
I think I've spoken enough.
Fantastic. All right, have an awesome day, guys. We will both catch you very soon.
Catch you soon, mate.